Hello, my name is Teresita Blanco, the Artsy Sister, and today we're going to be discussing watercolors. Like, watercolors, they come in the whole basis of them is that you use water as a medium in order to generate a painting. So, they come in cake formats, and then, like this. Or you can also get them in tubes, which are delivered like that. The thing with the little tube format is that they come out already with their pre-water, but you can just add more water in order to expand the picture around the edges. And the other useful thing of watercolor is that if they dry on the palette, you can just reactivate the paint by adding water. They also come in ink format. And then, they already come nice and moist. You don't need to add extra water or anything in order to render a picture. You see, very nice and moist, nice and moist painting. And of course, for more more careful applications of the watercolor, you also have the pencil form of the watercolor paint of watercolor. At first, over the top, they resemble just your traditional coloring pencils, but the moment that you add water into the mix, the pencil activates and then it starts behaving like watercolor. You can even dip the watercolor pencil in order to get the nice watercolor effect. You see, that is just the same watercolor pigments, but in coloring pencil form. There we are. Now let's add more water to it and see. Now the pencil lines that you added resemble watercolor. And another format that watercolor paints come, they also come in crayon format. But it works exactly the same as your tradition, in the pencil format. As soon as you add water, and you're good. There are other things and they also come in marker format. You gotta make certain that the marker, for it to be watercolor marker, it has to say aquarelle. If it has anything related to water, it's a good chance that it's a watercolor pencil. See? And it turned into that nice sweet baby pink. Well, the reason, for more controlled forms of watercolor, if you want to have a nice solid line art, you have to use ink pens that are waterproof. You see, over here it says that it is, it says here, very important, waterproof. If your pen doesn't say waterproof, it's just gonna run off. It's just gonna run off as soon as you add the watercolor paint. So that's something that you gotta consider, because otherwise, once it dries a bit, then you're not gonna be able. Then when you add the watercolor on top of it, it's gonna just fade away. So let's see, make certain that the ink dried enough, and then let's see. You can just paint on top of it, and it's not gonna run out. So then that's good for folks that like to have a nice solid line art. Or paint before having a nice solid line art of paint before adding their fancy color. It's just a preference. It depends on how you like to roll with your watercolor. And over here we have some mica powder. If you add a decent water into the mix, you know. Then you can have your mica powders behave like a watercolor. So that's something that you can consider if you want to have like if you want to like add some fancy glittering colors into the mix. You can just add a little bit of water to your mica powder, and then voila, you have nice shimmering watercolor paints there, good to go. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is your acrylics. If you add enough water to your acrylic paint or to your acrylic paints, just get a little bit, that's a little bit a dab. Then you can have your acrylic paints behave just like watercolor paints. You know, it's just add a lot of water. You know, very hydrate a lot your typical acrylic painting, and then see, it forms the brush strokes that are practically identical to your typical watercolor paint. Like, but the thing is that unlike watercolor paints, as soon as this paint film dries, it's gonna be a solid surface. So then you're not gonna be able to reactivate this red paint, because it's not a true watercolor. It's acrylics that you water down enough in order to have it behave like watercolor. So keep that in mind when you're working with watered down acrylics, that as soon as it dries, yeah, you're not gonna be able to continue working with it. Oh, and before I forget, like if you have like smudges and stuff that you don't quite like, a good way to like remove certain pieces of it is just that you water a little piece of tissue, and then you can kind of like lift up the paint. You know, have it work kind of like an eraser and even lighten it up somewhat. There, but make certain that, and another good advice is that make certain that the thing that you use in order to clean your colors is not the same water that you use in order to like mix the colors, or you know, because then you have your water that already like permeated with one dominant color. So then everything that you use, you know, every color that you mix with it is gonna be forever kind of red. So always make certain to have different sets of clean water in order to keep the stuff from mixing. So I hope that you find this short watercolor tutorial useful. And as far as personal preferences, I prefer to use like the watercolor cakes more than the little tubes. You know, just a preference. It's whatever works for you. Bye bye and God bless.